My parents disowned me at 18 now. I make more than both combined, and they don't even know where I live. I'm a 27-year-old guy, and I haven't spoken to my parents in almost a decade. Not a text, not a birthday call, nothing. The last time I stood in that house, I was 18, standing in the middle of our living room with a duffel bag at my feet, and my father's voice echoing off the walls like gunfire. You want to throw away your future for some garbage digital art? Be our guest, but don't come crawling back when you fail. My mother stood beside him, arms crossed, her face twisted in disappointment. You were supposed to take over the firm, she said, like I'd just destroyed some sacred inheritance, I tried to explain. I told them I didn't want to live and die inside spreadsheets, that I'd been teaching myself design, coding, animation, that I could build something on my own, but they didn't hear a word. To them, I wasn't their son anymore. I was a broken investment. I remember the air outside was cold that night. Autumn in my hometown always smelled like dried leaves and burnt firewood. I stood there shivering with my bag slung over my shoulder, realizing I didn't even have enough money for a bus ride out of town. No car, no job, no place to go. Just this aching mixture of fear, shame, and rage choking my throat. But even in that moment, standing on the curb like a stray dog, didn't cry. I told myself, they think this is the end of me. I'll make sure it's only the beginning. I walked until my legs ached. Slept in a train station that first night. I remember staring up at the flickering ceiling light thinking, I'll build a life they'll never be allowed into. And that was the last night I ever called them Mom and Dad. That first week after they cut me off felt like a blur of cement sidewalks, empty stomachs, and heavy silence. I called every contact in my phone, old classmates, part-time coworkers, even a girl I'd barely spoken to in high school. Most apologized awkwardly. A few ghosted me completely. One guy, Derek, barely remembered me but said, I've got a couch if you're not picky. IWASN. Single quotes T. Derek lived in a dingy 2-bedroom apartment that reeked of weed and instant noodles. His couch had a spring that jabbed me in the ribs every time I shifted, and the TV was always playing something loud and chaotic. But it was warm, and for the first time in days, I had somewhere to sleep that wasn't a bench. I picked up 2 jobs within the first week, morning shifts at a coffee shop and late nights cleaning a warehouse. It didn't leave much room to breathe, but I needed the money. I spent my breaks in the public library, not reading, just using the Wi-Fi. I'd open free coding tutorials on one tab and design software trials on another, teaching myself everything I could. It became an obsession, like every pixel I moved or line of code I learned was another brick between me and the people who threw me out. I'd come home after 16-hour days, dead on my feet, and crash on that couch while Derek played video games 2 feet away. Sometimes he'd look over and say, Dude, you're killing yourself. And I'd just smile, because what he didn't know was I wasn't dying. I was becoming. One night, I got a text from my mom. Just one sentence, hope you're learning your lesson. I didn't reply. I just stared at the screen and whispered, Yeah, I'm learning exactly who I never want to become. And I never opened another. Message from her again, the couch became my battleground. Every night after work, while Derek gamed or smoked, I'd sit hunched over a beat-up Chromebook I'd bought secondhand. For $90, the keyboard was missing the N key, so I had to copy and paste it every time I typed something with the letter. It sounds small, but when you're grinding through HTML tutorials or writing long design proposals, it makes you feel like the universe is messing with you on purpose. Still, I kept going. I found this subreddit where people would post freelance gigs, nothing fancy. Just little stuff. Logos, flyers, Instagram ads. I started responding to every post I could. At first, I got ghosted or laughed at for my low experience. But eventually, someone hired me to make a basic event flyer for $20. I spent 6 hours on it. When I sent it over, the guy replied, Dude, this is clean as hell. That moment lit something in me. Not pride, hope I made a fake business name. Built a portfolio on Canva. Started using a different email so it couldn't be traced back to me, not that anyone was looking. But still, I didn't want even a whisper of my existence to reach my family's world. They thrived in their pristine office, with glass walls and dull suits. I was building something messy, but mine. Clients came slowly. A $50 landing page here, a $30 logo there. I reinvested every penny into better software, faster internet at the apartment, and eventually, mercifully, a laptop with all its keys. I stopped feeling like someone crashing on a couch. I started feeling like someone building a future from the scraps everyone else threw away. But I never told Derek what I was doing. I didn't tell anyone, because deep down, I knew if this failed, I didn't want anyone watching me fall. And if it worked, I wanted to reintroduce myself with results, not promises. By the time I turned 20, I had built 2 lives. The first was what people saw: barista by day, warehouse cleaner by night, poor guy crashing on a friend's couch with no future. My clothes smelled like bleach or espresso depending on the hour. My fingers were always sore. My eyes had this constant ache behind them that never went away. Most nights I'd fall asleep still in my work uniform, mouth dry, dreams blank dot, but the second life, the one nobody saw, was growing like fire under the surface. I had regular clients now, small businesses, Etsy sellers, a local gym that needed a new online look. I learned how to automate tasks, how to run simple ads, how to pitch clean and professional without sounding like a beginner. I even got on Fiverr and Upwork, creating 2 separate profiles so I could test different pricing strategies. I used every dollar I made to either upgrade my tools or buy time-cutting down shifts at the warehouse so I could focus more on design. And still, I never told anyone. Not Derek, not the people I worked with, and sure as hell not my family. Once, my little sister messaged me through a fake Instagram account. She said she missed me. Said Mom and Dad still talked about my always with disgust. Apparently, they told relatives I ran off and joined a cult of broke artists. I didn't reply. Not because I didn't miss her, but because I knew any door I opened would lead right back to them that night. I pulled out the last family photo I owned. We were all dressed up for some charity dinner. I looked like an extra in someone else's movie. I stared at it for a long time, then tore it straight down the middle. That version of me, he didn't survive. I buried him under Pixel's code and ambition. The day I made my first $5,000 from a single client, I stared at the invoice for so long I thought my screen would burn it in. It wasn't just a number, it was proof. Proof that I wasn't crazy. Proof that I didn't need a family name, a degree, or anyone's permission to be worth something. The client was a boutique clothing brand looking for a full rebranding website. Logo, digital ads, the works. I had to pull 3 all-nighters to finish it on time, surviving on black coffee and cheap protein bars. When they emailed me saying they were blown away, I read it about 12 times. That one job paid more than 3 months of warehouse shifts combined. I quit the warehouse the next day. 2 weeks later, I used the money to get my own place. It was a cramped studio in a not-so-great part of town, peeling paint, thin walls, and neighbors who screamed through the night, but it had a door that locked from the inside, and nobody could kick me out of it. I stood in the middle of that empty room with a mattress on the floor and cried harder than I did the night my parents disowned me. Then I bought myself something I never thought I'd own. A new laptop, top dash of dash, the dash line. I paid in full, no financing. It felt like shaking hands with the future. I started working under a brand name I created, one that sounded like a real agency. Clients began referring others. Work piled up. I set my own hours, chose who I worked with, and raised my rates. Every click of the mouse felt like defiance. I turned 22 in that apartment. No cake, no guests, no texts from my family. Just me, my screen, and the quiet hum of freedom. I celebrated with a cheap bottle of wine and a single sentence scribbled on my wall in marker. Build a life they'll never recognize. And I meant every damn word. It happened on a Wednesday. Sometime around 11 p.m., I was sifting through emails, half zoned out. Tired from a long day when I saw it, a branding inquiry from a mid-sized accounting firm. At first, I skimmed it like any other message, until I saw the name. My breath caught in my throat. They were the direct competitors of my parents' firm. Same city, same market, same clients. In fact, I remembered my father calling them leeches once, ranting about how they were stealing clients with gimmicky marketing. And now they were emailing me, asking for a quote to revamp their entire brand. I stared at the screen for so long my eyes started burning. My hands hovered over the keyboard. I knew I could ignore it, pass it up, stay out of their world. But something inside me, a mix of adrenaline, spite, and quiet thrill dash, clicked. I responded under my agency alias. I gave them a fair price high, but not outrageous. They accepted within 24 hours. I dove into the project like a man possessed. Every visual, every tagline, every color scheme, I designed it with surgical precision. Knowing exactly what would pull their clients away from the bland, lifeless identity my parents clung to, I didn't just want to impress, I wanted to dominate. When I sent over the final package, their marketing head replied, "This is exactly the edge we needed. You've outclassed the competition." They didn't know who I was, but I knew who they were. And I knew exactly what this meant. I wasn't just building a new life anymore. I was starting to touch the old one, just not in the way they ever expected. And I wasn't done, not even close. 3 months after that project launched, I was invited to speak at a regional business expo, my first official keynote. I almost didn't go. Part of me still felt like the couchsurfing kid with no last name. But the organizer said my agency's campaign had made waves across the local accounting scene, and they wanted me to talk about branding disruption in traditional industries. The irony wasn't lost on me. I showed up in a tailored black suit and a clean white tee, simple but sharp. Hairstyled, watch polished. I looked like someone who belonged there, and maybe for the first time, I felt like it too. The expo hall buzzed with fluorescent lighting and distant chatter. I was being mic'd up backstage when I glanced toward the exhibition floor, and there they were. My parents standing stiffly behind their booth, Dad in his gray suit, arms crossed, scanning the crowd like a hawk. Mom beside him, fake smile plastered on for whoever passed. Their firm had a bland banner overhead and a sad-looking bowl of mints on the table. I stood there frozen, heart-punching my ribs. They didn't see me, not yet, but a part of me wanted them to. Just once, just for a flicker. Instead, I walked on stage. A spotlight hit. The crowd hushed. I started my talk calm, confident, even cracking a few jokes. I didn't mention names. I didn't need to. Somewhere in the audience, I saw Mom look up. Her eyes narrowed. She nudged Dad. He looked at me, blinked, then shook his head and turned away. They didn't recognize me, and somehow, that hurt more than if they had. After that expo, I kept my composure. I smiled, I networked, I shook hands with CEOs, and gave out business cards like I was born for it. But when I got back to my hotel room, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the floor for over an hour. I wasn't sad they didn't recognize me. I was angry, I still cared, and that's when my mind dragged me back to the night. Everything almost ended. I was 19, still crashing on Derek's couch, barely making enough to survive. That winter was brutal. Pipes froze, power went out, and Derek had to leave town for a week. I stayed behind to keep freelancing, but the heat never came back on. One night, the temperature dropped so low I could see my breath inside. I wrapped myself in 2 thin blankets and still shivered uncontrollably. I tried to work, but my fingers were too stiff to type. I remember looking at my laptop, thinking, is this what I'm doing all this for? Just to freeze alone in the dark while the world moves on. I walked to a 24-hour gas station just to get warm. I didn't even have money to buy anything. I just stood near the coffee machine, pretending to read labels until the cashier gave me some. Eventually, I locked myself in the bathroom and sat on the floor for hours. Knees pulled to my chest, head on the cold tile, I genuinely considered giving up that night. Not just quitting the dream, but quitting everything. I stared at my reflection in the dirty mirror and whispered, maybe they were right. But somehow, I made it through. I went back to that frozen apartment and opened my laptop with numb hands. And I started building again, because if I was going to die in the cold, I'd rather die chasing something they said I couldn't have by the time I turned 25. Everything had changed, but no one from my past knew it. My agency had grown from a solo hustle into a full-scale creative firm. I had 3 full-time employees, 5 freelancers on retainer, and clients coming in from 3 continents. We didn't just make logos anymore. We built brand identities, ran ad campaigns, restructured digital ecosystems, and then it happened. Our Q4 revenue crossed $1.1 million. I sat alone in my office that night, lights low, a bottle of whiskey untouched on the desk. I should have been celebrating. I'd hit a milestone people only dreamed about, but all I could think was, They have no idea, no clue that the failure they kicked out now ran the agency that redefined half their industry. No clue that their competitor, my biggest client, was breaking records using the very strategies I designed. No clue that every smug quote my father gave to newspapers about hard work and legacy was being quietly buried by the results of my work. I didn't need revenge anymore. I didn't crave some dramatic confrontation. What I felt was colder than that, indifference that then. I saw it. A LinkedIn post, my father had written some. Long-winded update about how young people today don't want to work, how real careers aren't built from Wi-Fi and daydreams. He ended it with a jab about digital drifters with no backbone. I read it twice, then laughed. Not out of bitterness, just clarity. He was still building a wall around a shrinking kingdom. Still preaching to ghosts and me. I was building cities in places he didn't even believe existed. I closed the tab, leaned back in my chair, and for the first time in years, allowed myself to say it out loud. I made it, but I knew that wasn't the ending. It was just the silence before a new storm. I hadn't heard her voice in nearly 8 years. The email hit my inbox at 2:13 a.m. Subject line, "Is it really you?" I almost deleted it without opening. The sender name was unfamiliar, some random Gmail address. But something made me pause. The first line read, "I saw your interview. I knew it had to be you." My stomach dropped. She said her name in the second paragraph. "It's Emily, your sister." I stared at the screen like it was haunted. She told me she'd found a podcast clip of me being interviewed, my voice. My face blurred slightly for brand purposes, but the way I spoke, my laugh, my story, she just knew. She'd been searching for years. Our parents still talked about me like I was a stain. Said I'd gone off the rails. Joined some underground cult of digital anarchists or whatever nonsense they invented to make peace with the silence. I left behind. She didn't ask for anything. She just said she was proud. Said she kept my drawings from when we were kids. Said she still remembered the night I was kicked out, the sound of the door slamming. The way Mom cried but didn't stop Dad. She said she always wished she'd followed me. I didn't know what to feel. Guilt? Relief? I had hardened myself for so long against every piece of that life. And now a crack had formed. A real one. But it got worse. She told me they were struggling. The firm was losing clients fast. Rumors were spreading that their brand was outdated, cold, irrelevant. And they had no idea the marketing firm gutting them from the inside out was run by their own son. I closed the laptop, heart racing. I wasn't sure if I felt like a villain or just a ghost. Either way, I knew one thing for certain: they were closer to collapse than they even realized. For 3 nights, I stared at a blank screen trying to write a reply. I thought about saying everything I'd bottled up for the past 9 years. About how they made me feel disposable. About the frostbite I nearly got that first winter. About the nights I screamed into my pillow so no one would hear me break. I even drafted a sentence that read, "You didn't just disown me, lit the match, and watched me burn." But I couldn't send it, because the truth is, I didn't want revenge anymore. I didn't want to show up to their office in a tailored suit, toss down a copy of my bank statement, and watch their faces melt. I didn't want the dramatic movie scene confrontation, because if I gave them that moment, a moment any moment it, would mean they still mattered enough to need my explanation. So instead, I wrote a letter I never sent. I poured everything into it, every memory, every wound, every bitter truth. I thanked them for throwing me out, because in doing so, they gave me the fire to build something bigger than they could comprehend. I told them I hoped they'd survive, not for their sake, but so they'd have to watch the world pass them by while wondering who passed them, and then I deleted it instead. I wrote a separate note to my sister, short, kind, warm. I told her I was proud of her for finding me, that I remembered the nights we used to draw superheroes together under the covers, and that I still believed she had more heart than anyone in that house. I attached a blank check for her college tuition. No return address, no name, just the words, "Get out while you can. Create something. They don't own you," and I meant every word. I live in a penthouse now, floor-to-ceiling windows, city skyline in every direction. At night, the buildings look like static bright and meaningless. But to me, they're proof that I existed, that I endured, that I made something beautiful out of the ashes they handed me. I keep no photos of my childhood. No reminders of the house I grew up in. Nothing that smells like them or sounds like them. I don't even use my birth name anymore. I changed it legally when I turned a full rebirth. The only people who know both names are the IRS and my lawyer. Sometimes I wonder if they've tried to find me, if they've ever pieced it together, looked at the marketing agency draining their client base and thought, why does this feel personal? Or if they're still too proud to believe someone they discarded could be the one outpacing them in silence. But that's the thing this wasn't about. Beating them anymore, it was about removing their names from the story entirely. The real win wasn't the money or the skyline or the fancy suits and boardrooms. The real win was that they no longer get a say in my life. Not through guilt, not through silence, not through presence or absence. They don't know where I live. They don't know what I've built, and they don't get to claim even a corner of it sometimes. I stand on the balcony with a glass of wine and let the wind hit my face. I close my eyes and listen not for traffic or sirens or the hum of the city, but for the silence, the beautiful, absolute silence of being completely free. And in that quiet, I hear the loudest thing I've ever known. I didn't just survive them. I erased them.